Welcome to Art is Trauma. I think we're on 5 now.
Wahoo!
6. Who knows?
Great.
Anyway, this week we're doing Maeterlinck, and we did Pelleas and Melisande, and a one-act play of his called The Blind. Okay, so this was my selection. And the reason why I selected it is because someone whose opinion I respect hates this. So I figured I
I don't
had
know how you hate it.
I'm surprised too. I'll have to ask him about it, dear Jason. But but anyway, yeah. So what do you think of it, Chris?
So, for the first time where we've done more than one thing, I actually had very different critical opinions between the two pieces.
Mhm.
When we did the cigars, I was like, it's all of it, all of this, and continuity of voice. Um, Philosophically and just in theory world, I found The Blind really interesting. But it didn't move me. I wasn't moved for whatever reason. Whereas I thought Pelleas at Melisande was perfect.
Okay. Well, for me, I both of them. I mean, Pelleas and Melisande is a better work, certainly. I mean, part because it's better drawn out. I don't know which translation you picked up, so I might have done different. I just did this random one I ordered off Amazon a while ago. For
An
three,
ex-library copy that was so beat up, the person selling it to me gave me a refund. The book, and I was like, great, okay.
yeah. So anyway, but okay, let's talk about the blind first, just to get that out of the way. Then,
Mhm.
what I find marvelous, and this applies to Post and Marathon too, is just the unworldly atmosphere of it. The sense of these really are like puppets, like that's what Maeterlinck supposedly wanted to make these plays for, is for marionettes. And the sense of they're not in control, they're not aware of the reality around them. They maybe have dim memories of what vision is like, but they're people who are led around, and the person who is leading them around is now dead. They live in this sort of vacuum of hypothesis and confusion. It's actually remarkably modernistic, except for the sense of delicacy, which you would never see in like the theater of the absurd. Like this setup of the blind is how much different from this is Waiting for Godot. you know?
Well, that was something and that was where this one I was more in theory world in my brain. I found actually I was watching a couple productions of it just on YouTube, and then I had to find a translation online. That one wasn't in this book. And okay, I was watching and I was doing the play, and I have the gift of sight, which they don't. And but when I'm reading it, I don't have the gift of sight in the same way. So it was actually a play where the experience of reading it and trading off was very fruitful for me because um the reading it, I felt like I was actually more in the experience of the blind because I wasn't putting bodies to the voices. It was just number three, number two. Whereas in the visual, I could just place people very easily.
Yeah, I didn't have so much, and just for the audience, because it's both of these plays are out of print, so I don't know what you're going to do, dear listener. Um,
That sounds out of print.
okay, they're out of print. What?
They're out of print. That's so weird.
Yeah, yeah,
Like a
they're
Nobel Prize winning writer.
yeah. Well, that's how things go. Maybe in France, he's still
Uh,
in print, but the translations are, I don't know, like I had to buy this weird thing from 1940.
Damn.
Um, yeah, but anyway, what was the blind is basically just these what 12 blind people just sitting around. They've been let out by this priest who's their caretaker, and they don't know where they are, and he's dead in the middle of them. And it's just basically them talking and speculating about where he's gone and what they should do, and they find out he's dead, and they hear footsteps, and nothing much happens, but it's all in the atmosphere of it.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was actually a very uncanny ending as well.
Yes. Yes. Well, it was it was a great image. It was a startling image. The sense of, one of them is this mad woman has a baby, and the baby's able to see, and there's this footsteps they hear walking around, and of course they don't know where it's coming from exactly, but they know the baby can see because the baby still is looking when he turns the body of the baby. Uh,
Right.
so here's the blind being led by a baby, by an infant.
Well, and that also has this modernist, almost postmodern focus on the body of like, okay, well, what can this body do and what can they not do? And I thought that the baby twist was really pretty well done. I thought it was a very well done image too, or not image, but twist.
Yeah, and that's just like that's what I like about Maeterlinck is it's the series of images that play across. And like in the preface for this particular play, there was a for Pelleas and Melisande, there's a great quote from Hugo von Hofmannsthal, which I never heard of him before. Um, a certain gesture with which you leaped from a tall wagon, a sultry starless summer night, the odor of moist stones in a hallway, the sensation of icy water which a fountain made to sprinkle over your hands. All your inner life is bound to a few thousand such earthly things, all your exaltations, all your yearnings, all your ecstasies. And that's just perfectly right. That's the sort of drama that Maeterlinck is making here. It's a series of images and echoing dialogue and just an atmosphere. Like it feels moonlit in a way that very little else does.
Well, and to go with that, so obviously actual blind people can tell what time of day it is often.
Mhm.
In this atmosphere, though, that was where we entered more of a magical, kind of a fantastic space, right? Is because these blind people are obviously not real blind people. Or
Yeah,
I don't even want to entertain it
these are
that way. You know,
symbols. This
they're symbols. Yeah, exactly. And so
this is not a naturalistic play about the disabled. You know, the,
no. And it's like and that's why I almost like the blind is one translation, but I almost do like the sightless better because it gives it that more magical
yeah, yeah,
spin to it. Because it's like clear when I was first reading it, I was like, oh, Maeterlinck's never met anyone he can't see before. And then I was like, no, that's ruining the atmosphere. The atmosphere is really good. And that aspect of they can't get anywhere is like very important. So it's not just that they can't see. It's like they can't even extrapolate certain things somehow.
yeah, and
They want to go.
yeah, there's a sense of just impotency to them. Of like one of them smells flowers
Yeah.
on the wind, and one of them goes to try to find and pick them, and he ends up just trampling over them. Um, and that's just a sense of, oh, they can't even do that exactly. They spend the first part of the first image that we're given in the play is of the dead priest who they are arrayed around, but they spend the first half of the play wondering where he's gone, and only later discover that he's dead. um and it's like,
Like
okay.
they're thirsty and all their senses are wanting.
And there's this sense of fear that dominates the play, like a gentle fear, um the way that they don't want to be outside, the way that they feel it's ominous, the waves roaring nearby them, the way they're startled by the birds in the trees.
Yes, they're like a personified mice in a way. Like if they were an animal, they'd be like a mouse, like afraid of aspects of the environment, or at least reactive to the environment in a very defensive way.
Yeah, and that's so if you're a plot person, you're not going to like this play. But if you
But there was still some dramatic plot points, though. I got it. He's good at plot still, even in this. There's still little tensions and
yeah,
little.
yeah, like there's little things. There's um but it's very much more like waiting for Godot, where like yeah, there's little while they're waiting around for nobody, they'll have little fights or tiffs, Estragon and Vladimir, but ultimately they're doing nothing. They're killing time, and here it's killing time, but well, it's not killing time; it's killing eternity. Um, like, that's what I
Like
want to say.
carving out time from this endless chunk in a
Yeah,
sense with their
yeah.
band.
Yeah, but and they, and just like that sense of like ignorance that they have of like one will say, "Oh, he went down to the lighthouse. There's a lighthouse," like um then I can't remember another example of that, but it's just other things like that of like they don't know basic facts about the island in which they're living. Um,
I think you're right, and I also think that like the techniques that I've seen in this play are techniques that would be contemporary today. Like these are still tech. Like this play is not just modern. It does have a rather contemporary sting to it to me, where it's like you could go and see a student, well, not a student, but a play that does these types of techniques today. I think for the most part.
yeah, yeah, and I just love like some of the little phrases he sneaks in here are just startling to me. Like, they're wondering about whether it's day or night, and one of them says, uh, I can hear the stars twinkling." Like there's just such a that's just so endearing.
That's also important because it gives a sense that the characters are less reliable than even they say they are because they're like pretty they'll tell you they're impotent, right? Like they're like, oh, I don't know that, I don't know that, I don't know that. And when they're wrong about that, or at least give you that sort of interesting dichotomy between of hearing the stars, that adds that doubt as to at the end of the play if a person's really there or not because they already mistook the stars.
Yeah, it adds to the sense of almost a hallucinatory quality uh, to it, and like but other lines are just like it's just it's nice. One of them says, "They say it's very dark and gloomy, old castle. No light ever shines there except in the tower where the priest's room is." And one replies, "Those who can't see have no need of light." And just I find that cute. Like I just find that little that little like bringing it into that abstract level. And other ones saying like, um, I can I my memories are more clear when I'm not thinking of them. It's again, yeah, it's like when it's more of a mist, when it's more just an atmosphere at my side. That's when it's more definite. Um, I'm blind even to my past on some level. Like it adds that to it.
Yeah, and there's the dichotomy also between the people who are blind after seeing and the people who've been blind their whole life, and
Yes.
the ones who look versus the ones who don't. And that was just a really nice aware distinction he made. There it was at one point where it's like, oh, some people look, but others who are, blind for life don't look. And that was a very good one too. A little just a nice little distinctive bit of writing in the technical prowess that he shows.
Yeah, and it's there's not really a whole lot to say about it or a whole lot to delve in exactly because
Oh, I mean, unless you want to do the symbolism side, which we normally don't do.
well,
We're not
I mean,
really
I'm not really.
symbolic people when we read literature. It's a priest versus the blind. I mean, hitting you on the head a
Well,
little there.
well, no, I'm not gonna. Okay, like the way that I read the symbolism, like the symbolist movement generally,
Uh-huh.
is I don't see their symbols as being any sort of complicated system. Like I like the way like you read Northern Renaissance paintings is like, oh, okay, the lily is the Virgin, and That the fact that she's not wearing shoes says something about how she's the wife, and oh, the dog represents fidelity, and whatever. Like I always find that to be extraordinarily tedious. But the sort of symbolism you have with symbolists is more just it's more of just an atmosphere of reminders. It's poetic. Um, that's how I read that. And this like that's how I read it. Of like it's a priest. Well, yeah, of course it's a priest who's sitting there. It's this sort of divine, unworldly figure. The fact that he's himself partially blind. The fact that they're not aware there's a lighthouse. It's like okay, there's I don't read that as any sort of complicated thing beneath it. It's just like no, it's just that's just a striking image which adds to the atmosphere. I don't pick it up in a conspiratorial way almost, but you feel free to object.
Well, I mean, if I'm gonna cough. I'm sorry. I was trying to not. Excuse me. Okay. So, I mean, I agree with that. However, I think that in the words of some of the symbolists, I think they might want us to look a little at archetypal
Yeah, I might
interplay.
be wrong. I may be perfectly
I
wrong.
mean, like I'm on just on the Wikipedia page, but like in the art, this movement, representations of nature, human activities don't stand on their own. They are veiled reflections of the senses, pointing to archetypal meanings. And I think that the archetypal meaning here involves the priest in a more language, in a more stand-in way. So like the priest is not just a character, the priest is an archetype.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. Of these aren't people in the naturalistic sense. Like there's something. Like they are half symbols. Um,
The blind, the priest, they gather more symbolic meaning than they do imaginary meaning, so to speak. Or more in and they have less interpersonal meaning in this
yes,
play
yes,
instead of
yes.
role.
As in the blind are basically undifferentiated. There's little differences between each individual character. Like there's a teensy bit of that, but barely, barely. They're so that's the sense in which I would understand it. Of they're not interested in characterizing them like you would in like a Chekhov play. But they are very much, it's just definite. No, excuse me. I don't want to read them as like, oh, there's some other kind of interpretation we have to put to this. It's more of just like, no, this is just an image of the human condition, according to Maeterlinck.
So the archetypes as images.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's there. I think you could also, without doing too much violence to the play, you know, enter into a dialogue with what priests stand in for. And it's usually how archetypes
Okay, well,
are.
how would you go about it?
Well, I mean, the priest brings the light, literally, of God and the good through the good word, and these are the blind. And I think that there would be a dialectic there between the priest as bringer of truth versus carer of the you know underrepresented is another aspect of
Well, okay,
society.
like okay, but elaborate on this more because I'm not in what sense, as in he is guiding them, like he is sort of giving them, he literally guides them physically. They're like they're litter, they're barely different than the sheep to a pastor, physically speaking. Um, I'm, but I don't really know what else. As in, but he's also himself like they say like he's losing his eyesight. Like he's barely better off than they are, in that regard.
And that little interplay there, um I think that in this and especially in Pelleas at Melisande, I get the main tension between archetypal motions and the human element. So you could think of the priest going blind as like his actual human element coming in to take away his sight as being the role priest. But more importantly, this happens in Pelleas at Melisande because they keep forgetting who they are. And that's the human element that I think it's much stronger in that play, which is maybe why I liked it more, is that they're in these sort of roles of a lover's quarrel, old castle, fairy tale landscape. Can't remember who we are is almost this human element that I mean, at the end of Pelleas at Melisande, when he's like, "I forgive you. Do you forgive me?" and she's like, "Sure." I
Yeah, like she's forgotten. She's forgotten this whole episode.
Yeah, it's like the archetypal element is the falling in love and the chivalry and the queen and all that stuff, and then the human element is, yeah, sure. I mean, who are you again, though?
Yeah, it's
Deeply tense. I think it's deeply tense between those two levels,
well, but
the
well,
archetypal story
I
layer
guess
and the
my
human.
yeah, I guess my problem is I don't understand what you mean when you say like this tension of like the fact I don't I guess I okay, there's the idea of a character as an abstraction. Like
Yeah,
you can present a character as not really quite human, acting almost robotically as if their actions were derived from a syllogism. Like that kind of I can see that sort of thing, and like they're very stock. Like one example where we see that that isn't just like propaganda or bad writing would be a satire. And it's like okay, this character is completely absurd and insane. You never see it, but they represent like the politician, the bureaucrat, the um uh, the bitterly complaining petitioner, whatever you want. And that's fine. And then you have characters that are actual human beings you recognize, um, that you know that you interact with, and yet you feel have their own personal values and experience.
right.
And I can see a work sort of going between those two sides, but I just don't see that working. I don't see that working in the blind because there just really isn't.
You're missing the human element totally, or not totally, but like in the characters, so to speak.
Yeah, there's as in there's something human. There's something like okay, I do feel like they're having feelings, but they're so de-individuated.
Right.
Um, and I guess that's partly they're de-individuated because they have no values. They don't remember who they were. Um,
Yeah. I mean, forgetting definitely. I mean, I've only read two plays now of Maeterlinck, but like forgetting seems to be really important in both those plays, at
yeah,
least in a structural way.
yeah. Let's actually get this into this more properly with Pelleas and Melisande, and for the dear listener, um, basically, Golad finds Melisande in the woods. He marries her. They uh, brings him. He brings her back to the castle. Pelleas and she fall in love gradually. Melisande get no Pelleas and Melisande fall in love. Golad gets increasingly more envious and eventually murders them and regrets it. And so that's the story. Not a very complicated thing.
Yeah, it's the plot of The Room.
Don't say that. Don't say that. It's the plot of Paulo and Francesca. Okay,
It's
like
just a
let's
simple
not
love.
do this. I mean, I guess you could
I
try.
just wanted to see Ray squirm on that one.
Okay, okay.
But no. For it to work, it is distinctly a archetypal love trio for
Yes,
everything to fall into place. That also is where this background element is at play in this. Is that it is a simple story,
yeah. That is
so
the
that the mood and everything can just take over.
yeah. As in, if it were to be the kind of story that was, complicated and involved and with actions and counteractions, then it would be too bulky and
Yeah.
sort of, I would say bulky, I mean like sort of heavy, material, actual. While here, yeah, like this sort of just this very light sort of plot gives a sense of a mist hanging over things, and like that's the way apparently the original production was done. Is it literally was very dark, the set, and there was a wall of gauze or whatever, like a very just sort of a transparent material hung over the stage, to give it a more dreamlike quality, which I find a very bold move. Don't know how well that worked out, but certainly bold.
Awesome. And it's funny. My experience with this is with I haven't watched the whole Debussy opera. I've seen selections from it and watched in some of the music, but I know the Fauré and the Sibelius really well. So it's really weird having three people's renditions of a thing that I don't know. Finally, knowing the thing, right? Because like this was like a pretty big play. I mean, this is like Romeo, not Romeo and Juliet level in terms of popularity, but for musicians, I mean, God, you got three of the leading turn of the century composers all throwing their hand in
Yeah,
to either
Debussy,
piano music or
Pelleas, Schoenberg.
oh, it's four. It's Fauré, Schoenberg, Debussy, and Sibelius. That's those are all pretty great composers. I mean,
That's
that's not
that's
really
non
those are
trivia.
not small deals, you know.
That's, um,
You know,
yeah, that's quite a list. Yeah,
I'd say second only to Romeo and Juliet. I mean, in terms of like that sort of love story turned into music, obviously Romeo and Juliet has more. You know, you have the I think the Gounod, Tchaikovsky, Prokofiev, Berlioz, but to have four of them and they're all made within 20 years of each other is signifies to me that this was a cultural phenomena, at
yeah,
least.
yeah,
So,
certainly. Now for me, I uh, just sort of start at the beginning. At the beginning, it's such a very striking image to have Golod meeting Melisande in the forest as he does. Like just the way she doesn't remember who she was. She knows she was mistreated in some way or is escaping something unhappy, but she doesn't remember anymore. Um,
yeah,
that he sees a crown or a tiara like in the water near her, and she stubbornly refuses to let him go and get that. And that just adds to the sense of mystery and like that sense of a dream, and that you were mentioning with the end of like she's forgotten what's happened and all of the trouble like at the end of the play. She doesn't remember all of it, and here's the beginning. Like she doesn't remember what happened beforehand. This is almost like it is literally like a dream where you don't remember how it starts, and you don't. And this is one of these episodes in your dream that you then forget later on. Um, and I find that well, it again it makes that atmosphere even more ethereal and unreal. Um,
yeah, and I mean, and it's interesting. So, just I sent you to go listen to the Sibelius incidental music, and what's funny about that is, I found the major key fast music very odd. You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
very
I
odd,
didn't
and the
get
slow music was great. And I just don't get the fast.
I didn't get why he went into the entr'acte or whatever it was called. Just like that really didn't fit in this, especially right before the death of Melisande. Like this is not.
It was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. It brought me totally out of the listening experience because what I was expecting was a more flat emotional landscape that he did really well on in the slow music. I thought the slow music, and that's all I remembered of it. So when I was listening to it again, and I was like, what the hell's this crap?
Yeah,
This doesn't fit the mood at all.
there should be like the part at in the garden. That one was more cheerful, but it still had a sense of just more calm and withdrawn sort of cheerfulness.
Yeah.
There's still like touches of malaise hanging over it. which is very much what we have like in the garden scene between Pelleas and Melisande. Is there is a certain cheerfulness and fun with Melisande just throwing up her ring into the air, and then it falls down into the river, or into the grove, whatever the thing is called,
And
and
that scene has the I think that's a scene that you cut your teeth on as an actress, because if you just do this, you can act this terribly. This that scene requires a lot from the actor and actress to get to be really perfect, I think.
yeah, yeah, it's how do you I'm just trying to think of like what will go into it of how do you get to the point where you convey Melisande as this childlike individual capable of that sort of simple-hearted joy, but also one haunted and oppressed by ill-defined fears. How do you have that sort of melancholy and childishness in the same person? Like I think that's and actually, well, one thing I have to say is she's just so much more interesting to me than Pelleas. Like I,
Yeah.
it's just like it's just like I just sort of wanted this to be Melisande and Melisande. Like I'm a little impatient when Pelleas is talking, not because he's bad or anything, but it's just like
Fine.
this Melisande just she's so much more real, or at least much more the focus. Even like other characters like Golad or Oxel, the father, have a little bit more teeth to them. Um,
Arxel is one of the few that actually has a more bird's eye view of what his estate is actually like, right?
yeah.
Like he does, like, I'm so sorry you're here at this like depressing haunted place. Basically what he says, like,
I
you're so
like.
beautiful and
Well,
lovely, and here you are in basically, an R.L. Stein novel. Not really, it's a lot more beautiful than that, but it is the gloom of the woods. And he's aware he's aware of that more than other characters, I think.
yeah. Well, I mean, because he's political. He's actually trying to do things to keep the dynasty running. Um, but he's also just very what's the word? He's resigned to decay to some degree of basically how it start when we see him. It's like he's like, yeah, okay, like my son Golad is marrying this girl he finds in the woods. Fine. I intended for a political marriage, but uh, we all walk backwards towards our fate. That he doesn't say that line exactly. That's the way I remember it, but like that's striking. Um,
Yeah, it was a very striking thing because he he allowed the marriage, and I also, on a very humorous level, I was thinking of the Monty Python, like, pulling swords from stumps is no way to run an empire, or something. Like, I felt like, marrying strange women out of the forest isn't any way to run an empire. Like, I mean, obviously it flickered in and it flickered out because the ambiance is so perfectly done. I wasn't like taken out of the experience. I just was like, yeah, okay, yeah.
yeah, well, it's just like what's so funny about him in a sense, Arcel, is just how he just takes it all for granted and just how I forget the context, but he just says that with regard to Golad or to Pelleas, with something that they've done, he just says like, well, after all these many years, I cannot even look, I cannot even look inside myself. And it's like, okay, that's skepticism. You've uh,
Yeah, but that there's a sense, I do feel that this play is a real transitional, like, historical work in a weird, in a way where you have these old empires crumbling and clinging to some way of being. um and it really fits a certain ambiance of almost like Anastasia like quality, where it's like this, the old Russia or whatever, about to crumble. There's this feeling that's really satisfying of, it's almost like you open up a basement closet and you go in and there's a path to the misty land that is in Pelleas and Melisande. Um, because it does seem like, that's that turn in fiction from these type of landscapes being real to like them being pure fantasy. Um,
Yeah,
for
it's
example, King Ludwig II, in reality, spent all that money building fairy tale replica castles to stage Wagner. I mean, that sounds like something I made up, but that's actually real. And that's kind of at that crossroads too. Late 19th century, strange. You're going to keep the memory of an era alive, and with King Ludwig, it's completely obscene, of course. But here it's not. Here it's this. It's pure atmosphere. I don't
yeah.
know.
I mean, it's and just like in more specific terms of the atmosphere of we have this great juxtaposition of on the one hand just images like finding Melisande near like in the middle of the forest near this pond, find of her throwing her ring into the air, of her casting her hair down like Rapunzel onto Pelleas. You have these really beautiful, delicate images, and you also have them in the middle of the night near the mouth of a cave, and there's three beggars sleeping. You have Pelleas and Golad underneath the castle near these miasmic waters.
Yeah,
And you have just sort of hints of just of the way the kingdom is falling apart and there's starvation. You have the slaughter of the sheep as Yonalda, the son of Golad, from his first marriage. Um, no, it's like this juxtaposition of beautiful delicacy and decay and despair.
yeah, yeah. And I was worried when they first were like, "Oh, there's a famine in the land." I was like, "Okay, so Maeterlinck could fall off the razor's edge here, right? Like the people show up and eat everyone or something. Like it's like but no, it really rode that magical line in the way that that Macbeth is able to as well, where there's this obvious binary. The people, whoever the hell they are, whatever, they're only going to intrude in a ghastly manner as they do in Macbeth. And then the people proper who are part of the inner subjective
Yeah,
working.
it's like to me, like it just reminds me of a bit like certain kinds of good science fiction. Like the only example I'm thinking of right now is Cowboy Bebop because we were talking about it the other day.
Yeah.
But it's just like okay, you have like the regular story that like that Spike and Jet and the rest are like going on, but like you just have these hints of yeah, the society around you just doesn't give a shit about your life. Like they're bastards. Like you just get these little hints and pieces of like they're moving inside this greater society that has all of these problems. Like just the fact that oh yeah, it's a science fiction show for those who it's like, oh yeah, Earth. Basically, the Earth is abandoned, and like it has meteor showers occasionally. It's like no, we never. That's never explained. Never part of the plot. Just background detail. Because that's just great. That's
Yeah,
the kind of
like,
world we live in now, guys.
and as a viewer, you take everything as fascinating, but when you appreciate the real of it, you're like, oh yeah, this is a very traumatic place to be. Uh, it's interesting. This is on a completely different wavelength, but in the same way that the show Bob's Burgers is, where it's this family barely able to scrape by, like they're in poverty. And so just on the real events, it's often like reads like, wow, that sounds, if you just read based on events, you'd be like, that can't be a comedy. And yet it is, because we're not just looking at the real events. But when you do notice them, you're like, oh wow, they're like 2 seconds away from starving at any given point.
Well, that's a little different.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, like that. That's like Chekhov is like if you read them, they can seem like tragedies, but you're supposed to play them as comedies, and they are funny. But
Sure.
we'll do Chekhov sometime. Is one of the plays? Is one thing is I don't read them as comedies very much. It's hard to. Um,
Yeah.
but I'll try next time. But but here's just like little details that just like fill in the atmosphere. Like Blade Runner is kind of that way, where it's like,
I
okay,
think Blade Runner is a great example, actually.
it's like you just get lots of little bits and pieces about the world that they're living. Or Alien is another good one. Well, with another Ridley Scott, where it's like, yeah, like just what this world is like, and it's not about what a lot of science fiction does. Oh, we're in this dystopian world and we need to overthrow it or something like that. No, no, this is just one little piece. You're just one little cog in this major machine, and that's sort of how these people are. Of in Pelleas and Melisande is they're one piece. Um, it's like, yeah, there's things going on in the world, but we're not concerned with the things going on in the world.
And that could one way in which the Maeterlinck could have aired is, I can see a terrible writer taking this play and it ends like let them eat cake type thing. Because we have to keep them separate in a certain way, or what intrudes from the people has to be some ghostliness of famine. It can't really be the populace itself.
Well, it's more the people. I mean, that's like the famine part that could have been replaced by any number of other things. It's as in it could have been like oh, there's a war going on. And
Wild elephants.
there's there's a lot of intrigue at the court. There's uh, I don't know what else. There's floods. I don't know. Whatever disasters people have. Um, these sorts of things. Now, I think starvation is a particularly good one because it's a slow, painful thing. It's a withering away. While those other things I mentioned have a more violence and color to them. Um,
Yeah, yeah. I agree. I also like I think I want to change what I said earlier. I think that Melisande is given the most humanity of the characters, in agreement with what, or just like the most character of the group. Um, and I think that actually forgetting plays this role of like becoming part of the ship. I don't know, becoming part of the landscape. Like Mist already has that symbolic quality of forgetfulness because as a metaphorically you can't see. And I think that the forgetfulness here almost forces the figures into the landscape.
yeah, yeah. I think that's a good way. I think I know where we're going with this. Like one aspect of the play is the hand of fate. Now,
Yeah,
fate is not heavy-handed. Um, in the way that let's say it is in like Oedipus Rex,
yeah,
where it's like, okay, we're making very definite actions, and fate is definitely thwarting us. Um, it's here. It's just more of like you're inevitably being pulled along, like a whatever the word for like the tide water or whatever it is, the water like pulling you away. Um, it's something that like no, you can't really resist this. This is just something that's falling upon you, and you can maybe sort of slow it a touch, like or not act with fate fully, like that. That's what you get with the sense of when the is being interrogated by his father Golod of what are Pelleas and Melisande doing when they're together, and they say well they just sort of stand and they cry. That's really all they do. And like, do they ever tell you to go away, Olda? And like, well, no, they actually almost begged me to stay.
I
Um,
love that line. That was such a great line, wasn't it?
it's,
Just that
it's like
moment.
they're sort of
Yeah,
resisting, but like just the scene with Pelleas Milsan while she's sewing or whatever it is, and just that sense of tension between the two of them.
yeah.
It's like, yeah, like this is there's no way around it. There's no way around like that, this need for each other that's been inflicted on them by forces beyond our knowing.
Mm.
Um, and in a sense, I mean, sort of just to put it this way, it's almost sort of the fact that they fall in love is as much sort of a part of the scenery or as inevitable as the miasma arising from the deep roots of the castle of that's just a thing that's happening, like there's nothing to do about it, it's just there.
Sorry. I mean, as with anything, there's a Janus face here. There's a thing in SpongeBob where he goes, I think everything's different here. There's blah blah blah, there's blah blah blah, and the walls are oozing green slime. Oh wait, they always do that. And there's there's this, the rising miasma, the plague of frogs that sing, the and then you just name a bunch of random crap that's ridiculous, like the rising miasma, of course, yes, the lake toad, the frog, you just name random stuff. But I I agree. So what do you see then, seeing as that as part of the scenery? What do you think are moments that stand out from the scenery or are particularly interruptive of that
Well,
mistiness?
I mean, I would say just sort of moments, I don't know, that are sharper to me, or is just, well, actually, okay, one is when Golad is with interrogating Ynold about what's going on, and in particular when he pushes Ynold up to spy on what Pelleas and Melisande are doing in her room, and they're not doing anything; they're just crying, and just that sense of Ynold is so scared, like he feels there's something really wrong about this, and Golad just can't help himself but to do that. Um, or when Melisande is throwing up into the air her ring, and Pelleas is like, "Careful with your ring." Um,
Yeah,
things like that stand out to me as like just
and the
great.
frivolity of that scene stood out to me as not being part of the scenery as much. Their love, in a sense, uh, well, they're when they're cheerful, their love stands out from the scenery to me.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I guess the love between them. There's an issue to me because there just isn't enough of Pelleas. There isn't enough about him, like all we really, so like that makes the love to me a little bit difficult to get behind fully, because like all we ever get is like, oh hey, my friend's dying, but oh I'm convinced to stay here because to make sure my brother gets here, and also because of my grandfather tells me to stay, or no, his father. And it's like, okay, oh, I want to go see my friend's burial. Oh, well, my father says I shouldn't go, so I guess I just won't. Um,
So it's
like,
like it's time the dad intervenes to actually say something, kingly, he's actually furthering along the fratricide.
yeah, yeah. Actually, that is actually a. I didn't actually think about that aspect. That
I didn't notice that until you said that. I was like, wait, yeah, everything he
yeah,
does
like
actually do
that
furthers
is
the plot.
yeah. Actually, you're actually right about it. Of if he had, if Arksel had not been trying to, since defend the interests of his house, then he wouldn't have made this happen the way it did,
Yeah.
which is a very Oedipus kind of irony.
Yeah, there's a sense that the king needs to keep everything close in this time of decrepitude, in a sense. Like there's a sense in like, no, don't leave. Just don't leave. Just don't. And then all reasons are secondary.
Yeah,
Whereas Arc's just like, don't leave, please don't leave.
well, yeah, like the reasons with Arcel are very conniving and manipulative. I feel like it's they're plausible enough, but it just also feels manipulative when he says them. I don't blame him because Maeterlinck doesn't blame him. Um, but that is the feeling I get. Um, I'm trying to. What was the point I was trying to get at with that? I don't know.
Well, I think that we
Oh,
can pick
well, my part was just like with Pelleas is I just don't really like him that much. Like he's fine, but I can't tell you anything about him like I can with Melisande.
or
Um,
Arkle. God, what's
or
his name?
Arkle, whatever it
Arkle.
is it Arkle? I don't know.
It's Arkle,
I
but
apologize to your audience.
Arkle, Arkell, if you want to be like really magical.
Whatever it is, I looked up Gola. Um,
Well, Arkel.
yes, this is yeah Arkel. I don't know why. Where did I put? Where did I get the S? Arkel.
Arkell.
Um,
Arkell is actually, the more we're talking about it, the more I'm realizing pretty developed.
yeah, yeah. He's a man who's he's a hard politician who also has the wisdom to realize that he doesn't know what he's been doing, that he has no control over fate. Um, so he is appealing in that way. I guess the least developed character is Genevieve. You know, like Arkell's wife, I believe. Um,
Like, who?
yeah, no, like she has like one scene. She has one scene, and then she's gone. It's just
Yeah,
like
I
two
forgot
scenes.
about her.
Yeah, naturally, as one would naturally forget about her. But I mean, I will say like the moments of tenderness between Pelleas and Melisande are still successful to me. Like I do find um like the way that he's reaching up to her window, and she's trying to reach down and she can't quite do it, and then her hair comes down. And it's like that's a beautiful kind of image. You're expecting one thing to happen, something more physical and tangible, and then you get the opposite. Well, no, not the opposite, but you get something ethereal and unworldly,
Mm.
um, and that's very appealing. Um, and of course, the final love scene between them before they're slaughtered, um, is similar. It's like like this is a beautiful, tender moment between them. And it has that same anxiety of they knowing just what's going to happen to them immediately.
Yeah. Another thing is that I'm realizing it. There is a lot in this play of. Oh, I thought you were making a point, slinking slowly into the mist. Uh,
Yeah, that would have been more thematically appropriate.
I just like grab my computer and start walking behind the water heater or some nonsense. Okay, so what I was going to say is that I forgot something in the imagery of the play, which is that there's often a haunted quality to these characters, but also to the scene itself. So um, obviously Golod haunts Pelleas and Melisande before Pelleas gets murdered. Kind of, I see him. He's over there, and you don't really see him, and you could stage that a couple different ways, uh, for sure. But then also the very end, which I thought was super effective, of having the maids slowly encroach upon the scene. I thought that was really captured that haunted quality, and the maids kind of stand in for the rest of society there, the famine arriving, I think, in a certain sense, as death.
Let's see. I'm not. I do agree it's a powerful symbol. I wouldn't put it in societal terms. I more think of the maids almost more like the symbols of like those women who are like the fates, sewing away
Yeah, Atros apropos. Yeah, of course.
something along those lines, and like the fact that they're coming in and how they begin the play with like we need to clean the gates. I'm sorry, I just lost. Oh my god. Wait, wait. Are you there? Are we there? Let's use the iPhone. Okay.
Uh, You're
Okay,
back. We had a
I
moment of
lost
freeze. Hey,
power
that
for
wasn't
a
too bad
second.
though.
I lost power for
Oh, you lost power. Okay.
for a second. But now things are
Well,
better.
you were saying you were just saying a really great point about not the maids were not societal. The word I used, they are um stand-ins of the fates, is
Yeah,
what you were saying,
yeah,
or evocative of the fate.
yeah. It's like they're the ones who sort of start off the drama, and they're the ones there at the end. They're the ones who open the gates, and they're the ones, well, literally opening the gates for go for when they discover Melisande and Golad lying there. Um, so it's I like that sense of and like and they actually they have that same sort of impersonality as the blind. They're just sort of this undifferentiated mass of women who talk to each other. Um,
They're often factually correct,
yes,
which puts them more in the position of like muses of an ancient Greek tragedy. They're
yeah,
kind of
right.
communicating a little bit of real to us.
Yeah, like they feel more like they almost feel more like narrators, relatively speaking. In the sense of just like how they're
I think
detached.
that's common.
Yeah.
Sorry, you keep breaking up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I can't. Can you hear me now? Is it better? It's raining really hard over here. Um. Okay. I guess I'm not. This is sad. Can you hear me at all?
I can hear you, but your visual is pretty bad.
Okay. Maybe I just turn off my visual for right now. Is that better? Can you hear me better now, or is it?
Yeah, it's like a great photo with you and your cat.
It's not even my cat.
Oh.
But
Well, why don't we do like let's do like 10 more minutes to
okay,
sum up, and then just in case you lose power again.
okay. Let's just sum up. So I guess the way we sum up is, how did this traumatize you?
Um, Dealer's choice. Can you go first on this one?
Okay. For me, I was just intoxicated by the atmosphere of unworldly delicacy, of just people just on this sort of very high, sensitive, spiritual level, being carried around in this world that's unfit for life in some way, or just mysterious to them. Um, I just, it's so delicate. It's for me. I do find it difficult to imagine staging this because I feel like actual people are too real for it. I almost feel like it'd be better off animated, like a yeah, like a Miyazaki movie. Um,
Yeah.
because it would be because you could capture more of the sense of unreality more truly there. Like I do actually get why he wanted this for marionettes because it's like no, it's people are too heavy-handed for this sort of thing. Um, so yeah, like that atmosphere was it's just I mean it feels like moonlight. It feels like a soft echo in the night. It feels like a hand just slightly uh, moving across your arm. More wind than flesh. Um, it's a it's a kiss on the wind. That to me is like it really was a different kind of feeling. Like I've seen romance, I've seen modernistic dramas that have a sense of unreality to them, but I've never seen the two things put together in this way. It kind of reminds me of certain feelings of adolescence, of just this kind of beautiful vision of romance and delicacy, but also feeling very frustrated in that same connection. So like that's why this really meant a lot to me. One of my favorite plays now.
Yeah.
And you, dear Chris.
Cool. Well, okay, so my experience of this is going to be forever colonized by all the music I know as if it preceded the play, which is factually incorrect. It's like all the music and then the play. Someone went, these three pieces or these four pieces of music seem to be saying something similar. I'll make a play of those four pieces of music. And but in reality, what strikes me is there's certain things that are evocative in general, I would say, to composers. Mood is one of those things where if you can paint a consistent mood, you're already moving closer to music than just characters doing things. And this had a very strikingly consistent ethereal mood. I mean, it was like the essence of ethereal in a lot of ways. The
I I would be hard pressed to imagine anything more ethereal than this. Maybe certain works of Japanese painting or Chinese painting, like those are competitive with this. But
uh,
that's about it.
yeah, and that really hit me. And it hit me more than the island, or sorry, the blind,
Yeah.
which well, I felt more like an interesting study in basically qualia. I mean, that's a horribly anesthetized. Uh, I'm sorry. That's it felt like a study of qualia to me,
Yeah, I
and
know. I know.
that's
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I feel really bad about that because
Hey,
that was
okay.
not at
It
all
doesn't
what
have to
qualia.
hit you. It doesn't have to. It doesn't have to be a gut punch. Like I'm on board with the blind. Like I think it has a similar kind of atmosphere, but it's not nearly as well developed. It's there isn't that soft sense of an impossible romance. There isn't the atmosphere of decay and loss. There isn't um I mean characters. There aren't characters in it, which is a problem. Um it's a fine one act play, but it's not something that, you hold in your heart forever. Not like Pelleas
I
and
mean, I
Melisande.
like it. Yeah, like technically perfect in a lot of ways. It just didn't, have that final notch of of getting me where the moments I'm a guy of moments. So when I'm reading, there will be specific moments where I can go, oh, and now the whole play has hit me.
Mhm.
But it usually happens when I come to one or two moments, and it was when Melisande forgets.
Hmm.
That really sums up so near the end of the play. That really is a great moment for me in
Yeah.
drama. I thought it
Yeah,
was
I think that's an
it
argument.
really encapsulated it.
Yeah, I think that is a great moment to highlight because it's again just and then just this sense of to me when I hear that it just adds this sense of infinity to it in that we were talking about this just earlier, but the fact she's been through all this before in some sense, she's been through. That's why she's
Yeah.
somewhere in the forest. She's forgotten what's happened. She's thrown away her crown. Um, it's happened
Oh,
before.
it's kind of eternal sunshine on the spotless mind
Yes,
in a very limited sense,
in a very
obviously.
limited sense, but it's that sense of well, actually, and well, making it more modernist. It's very waiting for Godot, and that well, how long have they been waiting for Godot
Yeah.
exactly? Because they forget too. Um, they're
Yeah. Very good.
um, so like that sense of this is just another dream she's passing through, in this case a dream where she actually dies properly, but it's like that's great, that's wonderful. um so anyway, okay, so I think that does it for us. All right, so
Great choice. I loved it.
okay. Well, I'm very glad that you liked it. So next week we'll be doing Hauptmann, Hanel, and the Weavers. Another good Nobel Prize winner. I think yeah, he got a Nobel Prize. Um, so that'll be good. And that'll be that'll be actually. It's going to be surprising the level of parallelism with this week. In a lot of ways. Uh,
Hey Ray, you're breaking up a lot.
okay, okay. I'm sorry.
I don't know what you were saying there. Sorry.
Okay, whatever. Um, Nate, I don't know what to do. All right. So anyway, just bye, just bye. Um,
Sorry, Ray.
bye.
Good luck. Hope you don't lose power.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.